Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the IVES 054B3. This is what's called a Dutch door bolt. It is basically, an 054 has been manufactured for decades. I don't know how many, but several and many. And it's basically a surface bolt. But when it is robust, large, and relatively short for its size, it's a Dutch door bolt. Generally, where you're going to see this used is in its intended application. To secure the top leaf, how am I going to do this? The bottom leaf and the top leaf of a Dutch door together. Okay, so a Dutch door is literally a door that's been manufactured such that you have an upper portion that would generally swing in, but the lower portion is in the latched or secured position. And there are times, of course, you want to secure the top half of the door to the lower half of the door, because the lower half of the door is generally where the latching or locking hardware is. And a Dutch door bolt or a Dutch door quadrant is how that's done. A Dutch door bolt is far more common. This project that I'm doing, client wanted, gave me a specification of 4.5-inch surface bolts, polished brass. Well, turns out that they're being used for rather large doors, and this meets that criteria of about 4.5 inch, okay, polished brass. So Dutch door bolts are generally a little more decorative, slightly more decorative than just the slim 40 model. The part number from IVES would be 40, the modern, slim, smaller style bolt. That would work as well, but it's not really meant for a Dutch door. Part of what else makes this a Dutch door bolt is its package of strikes. You can install this as a Dutch door bolt, and it's got all the strikes to do that. You're probably going to use just one type of strike. You could install this for a full-size door just as maybe the inactive door of outswing doors or in-swing doors. You can just install that as a security measure, is how this bolt might be used. The application you're going to use it in defines which strike you're going to use, is what I meant to say. The strikes will define the application you'll end up installing the bolt in relationship to that strike. It's going to include the 3 strikes. It's going to have a T-strike, let's call it. It's going to have a mortise strike. Well, this could be a rim strike as well. Let's call this a rim strike. Let's call this a mortise strike. Let's call this another rim strike, but this would be the one that you'd see in the lower leaf of that Dutch door. That bolt would come right like that. That's how you would secure those. Chamfered edge here, so that guides itself nicely into the strike. Okay, let's take some basic dimensional properties. The overall length of the strike of the Dutch door bolt, 4 1/4. That's indeed what this is. The width of the bolt itself, about 5/8. The thickness of the bolt itself, it's about 5/16 or so. This is almost 100% brass. There's probably a couple of pieces of spring steel that are in there or something to keep the bolt running without slopping around tight to the mounting points. I forget what these are called, but there's a name for this portion of a surface bolt. Now the question becomes is what is its projection? And the projection is limited by how far it can slide here. So it's really just the dimension between the restricting pin here, right here, and the inside of this. Okay, so let's measure that. It's probably about 5/8 would be my guess. Yeah, 1/2 inch really. So the question is what's the projection? It's 1/2 inch. That's how much you're going to be able to throw that bolt. Actually, they'll both stay. How much you're going to be able to throw that bolt. Okay, that's how that's going to work. Now, let's talk about these strikes. The mortise strike is going to be used when you have a push side installation. where you're going to have a soffit of a frame with which to mortise this to. Think of an outswinging pair of doors. You're installing the bolt on the push side. In your mind's eye, think of the header and the stop that will be up there that the door will close against. You'll be mortising this right to that stop, to the soffit of the stop. You're mortising it to the stop, but on the soffit. The overall length of the mortise strike is 2 inch by 3/4. Then you have this rim strike. Now a rim strike is going to be used in the opposite application where you are mounting it on the pull side of a door. This will be mortised to the rabbet of the header generally, or a single door. This could be mounted as a single strike, and I'll illustrate in a bit how you would mount these. The rim strike is about 1 7/8 about 7/8. The center line, well, it's really not. It's about 1.5 inches overall. I'd say the center line of the screw holes to the area where the bolt, well, to the edge of the lip actually, is about 1.25 inches. And that's pretty typical. Now this Dutch door bolt, this will be, imagine you're standing at the opening and you open the top leaf and you look down at the top rail of the lower leaf. This is going to be installed right down into that. That's where this is going to go. Overall depth of that, about 1 3/8 inches. Overall width, 1 inch. The material that you're going to mortise to the top of the door is about 3/16. Center of the screw holes to the center of where the bolt will come in, about 7/8 of an inch. And then you're going to get fasteners for everything. This magnet I pulled out to detect whether or not these were magnetic. They're not. They're going to be brass. It's important to know that these screws are brass because you must absolutely pre-drill the hole when you're installing the screws to the right size. It's very easy to shear strip this screw to the point where it's not usable. It's hard to get your hands on solid brass screws in a matching finish right away. Let's switch to the screen view and let's talk about some supporting documentation, and we will show you how that rim and mortise strike work as well. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now let's get back to it. Okay, so what we have here is your Dutch door bolt. We have some images that we can look at. That's it in its packaging, the contents of the packaging, mortise strike, rim strike, and then your Dutch door strike. Different views of the bolt itself. You always can, well, I feel like I can always tell when something's made of solid brass because when it's polished you get a very warm sort of sensation. That's warm. There's a difference between polishing solid brass and plating polished brass over steel. Showing you the shape of the knob, the bolt and its chamfered edge. Guides, these might be called guides. The backside, the limiting pin. So it's about 1/2 inch from where this has to stop on both sides. All of your strikes and the screw package. You've got these two flatheads here and here. They're meant for this. You've got the 4 oval heads. They'll be for the bolt itself. And then you've got 3 larger flathead screws for either this or this. So you're in real good shape. The screws for this strike are physically flathead and smaller than the longer screws. Okay, now let's take a look here. Extended description information, Dutch door bolt, 5/8 throw, projection 1 1/8. I didn't measure the projection. Face of the door to the outside of the knob is going to be 1 1/8. All of this from here down to here is 1 1/8. 4 1/4 length. Overall length 4 3/8 including the knob. Yep, sure. Practical, rugged, attractive bolt for application on Dutch doors as well as other areas. Chamfered rod end draws the 2 leaves of door tightly together. Sufficient tolerance provided in strike opening to allow for misalignment of door leaves and also prevents binding of bolt. Decorative 1-inch knob made of solid brass. Includes the standard strike, the mortise strike, and the universal strike. I'm going to say that the standard strike is the one that I'm calling for the Dutch door. The universal is the one that I'm calling a rim strike. Okay. installation instructions. This document is likely not new. Yeah, this is the back of a package. Where to install the material. Here it is. 2 3/8, 2 5/8. Well, 1 3/4. 2 5/8. I'd say 2 5/8 would be more accurate. Holding my tape measure from this screw when I have them spaced 1 3/4 apart down to about the edge. Yeah, standard strike. That's the one. Universal strike, that's what I call the rim strike. Position bolt 2 or 3 inches from the edge using dimensions in illustration A, mark, drill, and secure. Position standard strike at the top of the door aligned with bolt. Trace bottom portion of strike. Mortise this area only to depth of 1/8 of an inch. Position strike, mark, drill, and secure. Standard door application. Mount bolt at top of door following step 1. Position universal strike. This is assuming that the doors swing in. They don't discuss installation on the mortise strike. We will, though. Product brochure is here. This is just going to show different bolts from IVES. There's that 40, that modern bolt I mentioned earlier. This was once upon a time made in 2-inch. It no longer is, but we can get this in 2-inch. 3, 4, or 6-inch is what it's available in. There is a larger version of a Dutch door bolt. It's, you get out to 8-inch and it's not called Dutch anymore. There's your Dutch door bolt right there. That's funny because they have that shown backwards in my opinion. It's interesting how photographs are in catalogs that don't portray how they're installed. Now, let's talk about that application of those strikes. This is a cross section. You have an in-swing door. The door swings in. You can mount a single door either up to the header or to the jamb. You can mount that, what they're calling the universal strike, right here, well, out here a little bit further. And then your bolt is going to go right here. Okay, you get that concept. That would work out really well. You want to do a push side mount for an outswing door. Take your mortise strike and put it here. You get the concept. It's going to work out really well. Okay. What they're calling universal, what they're calling mortise, I call that a rim. Then, of course, your intended application with the Dutch door strike, or what they call the standard strike. That strike is going to go right here. Mortise that out. Your bolt's going to come, obviously, here. Okay? That door is going to swing in that way. That's how that's going to work. Now, there's a link below this as seen here to the manufacturer's page. And from here, you can view not only all of the IVES products that we sell by means of this horizontal navigation, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the product catalog, which is here. And that's a handy document. It will most definitely allow you to review all things IVES related, at least as to the extent that it exists today. What IVES makes today is not what they offered 25, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, that's to be sure. The IVES product line is one that has been ever evolving, and that's a good thing in most instances. Maybe not in all instances, because they've gotten rid of some hardware that is now only available from, quite frankly, companies that are copying this design. And I say copying because I've got a couple of other catalogs here. I've got one from 1896, I've got one from 1904, and if you want to see what IVES was making 125 years ago, there it is. Back in the old days, while I was still in high school, I very irregularly worked in the family hardware store, and if someone came in and asked for IVES hardware, it was almost always sure that they were asking for window hardware, sash lifts and sash locks. And indeed, this catalog from 1890, well, it says 1896 on it, I suppose, if that's the year. That's what it is. Bolts and door hardware, sash locks, lots of options of sash locks. So, 75 years later, people are still coming in asking for IVES window hardware. The problem is they've gotten rid of a lot of that material, as I had just there and mentioned. But those catalogs are fun for you to be able to go back and do perhaps a little bit of research. If you have a very old home, I have customers of mine who have homes that are easily 100 years old. I just spent 9 days in a relative's home. That home is 90 years old. And while much of it has been modernized and updated, many elements remain as they did when the house was built in the late 1920s or maybe early 1930s. Such as the staircase, the balusters, things of that nature. So let's wrap up this video on camera. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. In conclusion, if you have any questions on the 054 from IVES or any other IVES product, feel free to let us know. Happy to help. There is something else you should know. IVES is under the Allegion umbrella, and IVES sister companies in the door hardware industry that are capable of providing the entire opening would be Schlage, LCN, Von Duprin, Glenn Johnson, obviously IVES, Zero, Steelcraft, Republic, other companies as well. Allegion is able to supply every aspect of a commercial project using those companies I just named, and again, others. Any questions on the 054 or any other IVES product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you very much. Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.